There. Okay. Greetings, everybody. Grace and peace to you. My blessed brothers and sisters, it's always a pleasure to spend this Friday afternoon with you and take a little time and kind of explore the things we've been individually and maybe collectively meditating on during the week. I just lit a candle, and there's this faint, very faint scent of frankincense in the air right now. Very faint. If I wasn't present, I'd probably miss it. So there's these faint scents, these slight taste, these twinklings of the eye, just this brush or kiss of the wind against our cheek. It's very slight. There's these subtle sounds that are just on the razor's edge of audibility, right there where there's, on the razor's edge where there's no sound in all sound. Right there. In that space in between the inhalation and the exhalation. It's like when you're on a swing and you're swinging as a kid back and forth, and when you go up, and right there where there's that pause at the very peak, the very climax of the upswing, and you just hang there. It's only for maybe a second before you swing back down. Which some would call probably like a Kairos moment. You know, a very, very powerful, yet a very, very subtle. And many times that which is really, really powerful comes to us subtly. The kingdom of God is hidden in a world of noise, in a world of doings. It's a very, very profound kingdom, a very, very eternal kingdom, a very powerful kingdom. And our heart takes us there. Our heart takes us into awe and wonder. It takes us places that our minds never in our wildest dreams have dreamt of. Where it comes from and where it goes to. a mystery. Then the heart takes us and leads us into awe and wonder, because that's home for the heart. The heart is at home in awe and wonder. Consider what Jesus said. He said that the wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear the sound, but you can't tell where it comes from or where it's going. And he said, so is everybody that's born of the Spirit. So it blows effortlessly past the wind. It blows effortlessly past mountains of stone and forests of trees, without a struggle. Yet relentless in its purpose towards a destination that is neither known nor required to be known. The blowing of the wind, the journey of the wind is everything. The journey of the wind is life itself. Yeah. Life's not about knowing where we blew in from or where we're going to. It's about the blowing itself. It's about the rush of the wind itself. I like Rumi, a Sufi poet. One line from one of his poems, Rumi says this. He says, listen and lay your head under the tree of awe. Listen and lay your head under the tree of awe. When from that awe feathers and wings sprout on your soul, be quieter than a dove. Don't open your mouth for even a coo. I like the way that Rumi put that, a tree of awe. A tree of awe and wonder, rather than a tree of knowing good and evil. Rumi's tree is Rumi, the poet. Rumi's tree was a tree of unknowing. Yeah, unknowing. It wasn't a tree of knowledge of good and evil. It was a tree of unknowing. A tree of awe, a tree of wonder, a tree of life. And it's like sit under that tree. Sit under that tree and don't even let out a coo. Like the dove, don't even let out a coo. Be quieter than the dove. There's that abiding in silence, that not breaking the silence, that staying rooted in the silence, Staying rooted in that silence, in the midst of all the urges to exclaim and proclaim all of our insights and opinions, in the midst of all our urges to correct others. there's the silence that remains if we just let it, if we don't speak from compulsion. And if we don't give voice to the ego, that silence will actually dissolve the compulsion. That silence will actually consume the compulsion to pronounce ourselves. And when it does, we found that we don't need to be pronounced. We don't need a name to be. That we can be without a word. Without a word, without a name. That our whole purpose of being, of living, is just to be and just to live. That's enough. That's where the joy is. That's where the peace is. And just being in all itself. And just being in all itself. We become one with this body of awe and wonder. And when we're corporately in this being of all, in this body of all, then we can stand firm, we can stand in awe. We can stand united in awe, in wonder, in silence, speechless in this holy silence. We can stand united. And we stand in awe. That's what keeps us standing. As soon as we start to think we know things, we become arrogant and we fall. We come apart. We disintegrate from that body of awe and that body of holy silence. When we lose our awe, we take a fall. Don't we? Don't we? Yeah, we do. Knowing, having it all worked out, knowing how it all is, comes before the fall. It fosters pride, it fosters arrogance, and sets us up for the fall. Knowing good and evil. That knowing good and evil precipitated the fall from grace. From the first bite of the tree of knowledge. Yet, if we are willing to abandon our ideas of right and wrongdoing, there remains a body of awe and wonder to come together in and find refuge in. I really believe God would like to literally just blow our minds, to blow them out like a candle, to snuff out the dream and the illusion of what we think life is, and reveal unto us what the eye has not seen, what the ear has not heard, what no human mind has ever conceived, what God has prepared for those who love Him. What God has prepared for us before time began is overwhelming, transforming. As we become aware of it. And it's been prepared for us. It's done. The place in the body of awe and wonder has been prepared for us. There's room for us there. It's here now. It's to be realized now in a holy instant, in the twinkling of an eye. There's nothing to wait on but life itself. There's nothing to wait on but life itself to surprise you with its everlasting presence that's here now in all of its glory. In all of its glory. Because the fullness of life is here. Completely, abundantly. And the way to see it, to taste of it, is to grow in sensitivity. To grow in sensitivity in a time where a big part of the people are losing their sensitivity, where their sensitivity, where their love is waxing and growing cold. Lost in their beliefs and notions, and carried away by their desires. Jesus once said this. He said that the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because He's anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim freedom for all the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free. To set the oppressed free. And I ask myself, what oppresses us? What is it that is here now that we need to be released from? especially if freedom is unconditional, especially if freedom is something that's true, that's real, that's eternal, that's here right now. What is it that we need to be released from? What separates us from that freedom? Is it not our notions and our beliefs, our fixed ideas and the desires to fix the world that come out of those fixed ideas? From our arrogance and conceit that come from our lack of vision of the impermanent nature of things. Those are the things that oppress us that we need release from, because they pilfer from us the vibrancy of life, the awe and wonder that life has to offer us moment after moment. I always like to consider what Buddha said. He said that the reason for my teaching is not for merit or good deeds or good karma or concentration or rapture or even insight. None of these is the reason that I teach, but for the sure heart's release. This and this alone is the reason for the teaching of the Buddha. It wasn't to get more insight. It wasn't to learn anything new. It was to be released from a heart that had it all figured out. What we think we know and what notions and beliefs that we treasure and we hold dear, it's the attachment to those beliefs and notions that become the chains and the ropes that bind us, that we tie ourselves up with. Nobody else is tying us up with them. We tie ourselves up with our beliefs and notions about what life is supposed to be about. Because the liberty and the clarity are unconditional. They remain present and available. The liberty and clarity are not taken from us, but it's we that tie ourselves up. So no one has the power to take us captive, but we tie ourselves up by confabulations of the mind that we attach ourselves to. And we can consider the fruits of knowing, of having life all figured out, what comes out of that, and what happens to when our beliefs are challenged, when revealed for the weak structures and unstable foundations for peace that they are. You can consider that. Consider the difference between living in certainty compared to living in awe and wonder. What's that like? When people are in fear, they know. They know. When people are in awe and wonder, they don't know. Would you rather live in wonder or would you rather live in fear? People in despair know. People in wonder do not know. Would you rather live in wonder or would you rather live in despair? So when we have faith that life's intentions are that of goodwill towards us and life's capabilities are sufficient, that we can rest in the awe and the wonder, then we can relax, take a deep breath, and just enjoy the ride, you know. We don't have to have our hands on the wheel all the time. We don't have to grip the dashboard. If we can have faith in life's intentions, of goodwill towards us and its capabilities to take care of us, then we can begin to let go of the expectations. Then we can begin to enjoy the surprise that life brings us rather than the disappointment of our expectations not being met. Then life becomes like a Sunday afternoon ride, which if you were younger, you probably went on these. Us old folks, we used to go for Sunday afternoon rides back when gas was cheap. And get out of the house for a while and just drive around and just kind of look around, you know. But we used to do that years ago. Life can become like a Sunday afternoon ride, just driving around, seeing where you end up, rather than a dreary ride to a dreadful job, you know. It can be that way. Doesn't mean you'll never get a flat tire while you're driving around, nor does it mean that you won't need a spare tire. But what you will be able to do is to travel without fear. Because you'll find that the world that you drive in is your world. You're not alienated from it. You're not hostile towards it. So if we can see God as a benevolent being, then every moment can be welcomed as a surprise. And life can really turn into be a really, really good trip. And if we see God as benevolent, and if we see Him as somebody that's incapable of caring for us, then we'll go out and seek certainty. Then we'll go out and seek certainty. Then we'll go out and seek knowledge rather than being content with a walk of faith. That's when we start to try to make sure what's not sure. To make sure that everything is going to be okay rather than simply trust that it will. And the making sure is what imprisons the heart and robs it of the awe and wonder. It's the making sure that takes out the zest out of a life. It's the making sure that Buddha said that he wanted to release us from. A lot of times people like to jump on a motorcycle, for example. I used to enjoy that. I had one. I had a motorcycle. And I enjoyed the ride. I enjoyed the sense of freedom that it gave me. I enjoyed the feeling of the wind, blowing on me and the space around me and all that. I used to take it to this park where I would go to walk and then park the bike and go walk. But I found myself with concerns about somebody stealing it, And as long as I walked around worried about somebody stealing it, instead of giving me the freedom, it kind of robbed me of that, I had to be able to set it free before I could ride free in the wind, I had to release it. When I think of awe and wonder, I think of who's got a richer and a fuller life. Somebody sitting at a desk job, hating every moment of it, yet afraid to venture into some sort of uncertain venture? Or is it rather the man that's teaching skydiving for a living, counting on life itself to bring him his next student, living day by day? Who's got who's more alive? Who's got the richer and the fuller life? It's kind of easy to see. And it's awesome when we can see the hand of God work in our lives, isn't it? But if we want to see the hand of God at work in our lives, then we need to allow ourselves to be in situations where there's work to be done. We have to be willing to step out in faith. If we want to see the hand of God at work in our life, we need to be willing to step into situations where there's work to be done. We have to be willing to step out in faith. Not in stupidity, but faith. There's a difference. This isn't about stepping out in stupidity, but faith. This isn't about throwing ourselves off of pinnacles and challenging angels to catch us, to prove that we're the Son of God. All that proves is that we're foolish enough to test God. And it's not our place to test God. It's our place to obey God. The way to prove that God is right is by obedience to what He asks of us without challenging it. And then we find that we're guided, we're directed, we're rewarded in obedience rather than negligence. It's like this: if you would decide to drive your car into the ocean and expect the waters to part before you, you're going to end up getting very intimate with the fish. You're going to sink and drown going out on your own. Yet if it's the Spirit that tells you to drive into the water, then you could expect them to part. So it's like whenever we drive into unknown waters because we've got God all figured out, then we play the fool. Faith's not about foolishness. Faith is about an innocent mind, not an ignorant mind. An innocent mind, not an ignorant mind. Faith is not about ignoring our circumstances. Faith is not about denial. This may come as a surprise to some, but faith is not about seeing farms as being unreal. That's not what faith is about. Faith is not about seeing farms as being unreal. It's about recognizing farms as they truly are. It's to recognize farm as what is real in the moment, in its certainty to change in time. Because farm is relatively real. It's not absolutely real. All farms change in time, but there is a relative reality to farm. And to ignore that relative reality and call that faith is really nothing more than foolish presumption. Faith is not a belief, but it's rather a recognition of the truth, a seeing of the impermanence of the farm, a seeing of the impermanence of the farm. What do I mean by that? Hope is born from impermanence. If we don't believe things can change, we lose hope, don't we? But our hope comes from the recognition of impermanence. Our hope comes out of the possibility of change. And our faith is a trust that things will change for the better and not the worse. Faith is about seeing the whole picture, about Not getting all caught up in the form that things take in the moment, but seeing the capacity, the capability for them all to flow and work together over time. You know? So faith is rather seeing our circumstances in the light of eternity rather than being the end of the world. It's for seeing circumstances for what they really are, not through serious eyes, but as light afflictions. Light afflictions which bear in themselves the opportunity to witness a far greater weight of glory. So an innocent mind is not an ignorant mind. An innocent mind is not about ignoring anything. It's rather about seeing through our prejudices, our notions, our beliefs. It's not about ignoring them. It's not about ignoring our prejudices, our notions, and our beliefs. It's about seeing through them. Jesus told us, he said, to be wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. To be wise as a serpent is not ignorance. Harmless as doves. So it's a matter of being fearless in innocence rather than ignorance. Fearless in innocence, not in ignorance. Childlike faith instead of childish speculation. Because we first have to be as wise as the serpent in order to be harmless as the dove. The wise as the serpent precedes that harmlessness. We first must be wise as a serpent in order to be as harmless as a dove. Because if we don't see the workings of the ego, if we don't see that going on, then we're taken over by it. And from the ego come the atrocities and the wars and the sufferings that are in the world today. You become wise as a serpent by watching the snakes crawl. You become wise as the serpent by watching the snakes crawl. We learn to recognize the path of the serpent in our very soul, the workings of the ego. As we sit in silence, as we sit in quiet and just watch and witness it. And it's when we witness it that we have the choice to be taken over by it or not. But if we sit quietly with it, we begin to get wise to it. We begin to see how it twists and perverts us to see temporal forms as eternal truths. And how that causes suffering. So faith is about knowing that you know all that you need to know. Faith is about knowing that you know all that you need to know to be alive and godly and right in the moment. It's about knowing that you know all that you need to know. Remember, Jesus said, he said, take no thought for tomorrow. And in the words of St. Paul, he said to forget what is behind and to press forward. I don't think he was talking about pressing into the future. I think he was talking about pressing into the depths of the moment, into the depths of now, into the depths of presence, into the depths of being. It's more about coming home to what's always been home. The home that's here. Here is home. And what is not here cannot be home. Because if it's not here, it's not. And home is where you belong. And we can sense that we belong here when we start to become sensitive. We can become to sense that there's nothing out of place. That there's nothing wrong with you being here. There's nothing wrong with you being at all. And here is the only place that you can be. And now is the only time that you can be. And to know that you belong here and now, that's great wisdom. To know that. That's great wisdom, to know that. How do you know that you know enough to be? It's very, very simple. I breathe. And because I breathe, I know that I live. And what more do I need to be? And just as each breath is given to me, so life also gives me everything else that I need to be to live fully and abundantly here and now. The fullness and abundance of life is here. It's now. If it's not here and it's not now, it's not real. In being, is enough. I don't need a purpose to live. I can breathe without reason. I don't need a purpose to live. And I can breathe without reason. I can just simply breathe. I can just simply live without reason, without knowing, without knowledge. Man was alive long before he ever took a bite out of the tree of knowledge. Because true purpose comes out of life. It's not that the life comes out of the purpose, but the purpose comes out of the life. And the purpose of life is simply to live. Life needs no purpose. God needs no purpose. And so in a sense, life begins when you lose it. When you lose your reason to live, then you simply live. Then you find there's nothing to gain by it, nothing to lose. There's just living. There's just being here and now. And when we're all together here and now, then we know that just being here completely is in itself enough. I am is enough. It's enough for you to just be you in the moment. That's all that life requires of you. Nothing more, nothing less. Just simply to be. To be you. I am is your destiny. You were destined to be. You were destined to be you. That is your destiny. It's not I am this. It's not I am that. It's not I am who. It's not I am where. It's simply I am. That's your destiny. You're destined to simply be you. And if you don't grasp this, if you're not getting this, it's simply because you're not altogether here yet. I remember something Jesus told Peter. He said, Satan wants to sift you like wheat. He wants to take you apart. To disintegrate a man. So that he's no longer integrated. So that his mind's over here. And his body is over here. And his heart shut in some other time and place. Yet if we can become still, and if we can become silent, we can reintegrate, we can come back together. because it's your nature to be an integral person. To be integrated is your nature. And if you'll simply be still and let nature take its course, then you'll come back home to the silence that remains, to the all that remains, to the love that remains that's ever present. And to reacquaint ourselves with the comfort of the awe and the wonder that we lost when we became disintegrated. Comes as we embrace the impermanence and the mystery of not knowing. We may feel uneasy with ambiguity, with uncertainty, because we've simply become so familiar with knowing everything about everything. You know, especially in the age we're in what they call the information age now. It's a time when people seek comfort in knowledge, in information, in what they know. And society has at large become one with an insatiable appetite for knowing. And we as individuals have come under a deluge of media in forms of newscasts and talk shows and search engines and social media and newspapers and this and that and the like. And we become flooded with a torrent of knowing, a torrent of knowledge. Yet the knowledge is not really uniting us. If we look at it closely, we can see that the knowledge, although the knowledge is increasing, it really doesn't do a whole lot to truly unite us. Seems like with the increase of knowledge comes an increase of perplexity. It really does nothing to unite us. And religious beliefs can sort of testify to this. If we look at history, we can see that the more people know about God, the more that divisions seem to occur. The more when they have it all figured out, the more divisions arise. And knowledge can never offer us lasting unity, because all ideas are impermanent. They're all subject to change, because the mind changes. And so this is why uniting around an idea or a belief will never last, because all beliefs and all ideas are subject to change. And the unity that's formed around beliefs falls apart when the belief falls apart, when the mind changes. Only the love, only the love that remains ensures a sure foundation for eternal unity. And we have to begin to be willing to unite in being rather than propaganda. Today there's a lot of uniting of people around beliefs, especially in the political arena right now. You see people with this belief and that belief, and they all rally around the belief. But in time, the belief comes apart, and the unity that was there disintegrates. You know? So as a body of humanity, we have to unite in love rather than in notions and ideas about what's right and wrong. Only when we unite in love rather than our notions and ideas of what's right and wrong will we see a unity that can endure the fire, that can go through the fire, that can remain through the troubled times. You know? And there's a power of inclusion rather than exclusion, which is amazing, which is of great value. When we unite in being alone, and when we unite in simply being, rather than being this and being that, being here, being there, being one who thinks this, being one who believes that, being one who wants this, being one who wants that. When we can unite in just being, because we all have our ideas of what right and wrong are. And they're all our own ideas. You can't really unite around that and see it last. But one thing we all do share in common is the fact that we are, that we exist, that we simply are. And we can unite in that awareness of that isness. That we're all this one body of isness. And you can't get away from it. You can't get away from that. You're born with it. You'll die with it. And it's enough just to be. It's enough just to be. Just to be. And if we can see that it's enough just to be, it's then that we can start to let things be. And we can get out of all our power struggles. We can start coming together instead of contending with one another. When we can simply just allow each other space to be. And allow ourselves space to be. It starts with us. Because if we can't let ourselves be, we won't be able to let anybody else be. If we can't let ourselves just be us, with all the feelings that come and go, with all the ideas that float through our heads, with all the desires that come out of all those ideas, we can just be with that. We don't have to fight it. We don't have to stand against anything. And that's something I think we got to grow accustomed to. We got to grow accustomed to just being with one another in silence. In silence. Just being able to sit side by side with one another. Without having to say anything. Without having to be anybody in particular. Without having to put on any kind of mask or facade. To just sit silently with one another. To just rest in one another's presence, you know? And just to know the okayness of that. Just to be able to sit silently with one another and sense the okayness of that. Because the okayness is there. But we have to get past the initial fear, don't we? Feels a little awkward, a little scary to sit with somebody and not say a word. We feel like we have to say something, like we have to do something. But if we can sit with that uneasiness, if we can sit with that feeling like we have to do something, say something, be someone. Then we can find that that's just not true. It's only by spending time with the world you're in, with the others around you, in that silence, that you begin to realize that it really is okay to just be you in the midst of all the other stuff, you know. And I think that's a good spot for me to quit. And I'll wrap it up there. Okay.